Pretend to be my husband. 1 year. She was staring at the cracked edge of her desk like it had personally offended her. I laughed, too fast, too loud, because that's what you do when something lands wrong in your chest, and you don't want anyone to hear it echo. Right, I said. And I'm guessing this is the part where you tell me why. Her office sat above the repair shop, a narrow rectangle that smelled faintly of oil and old paper. Downstairs, the hydraulic lift hissed and dropped, metal meeting metal with a dull finality. Up here, the air felt too still. Her coat hung on the back of the door, dark and precise, like she'd planned to leave but changed her mind at the last second. I'd worked for her 6 months, long enough to know she never said anything she hadn't already measured. Mid-40s, maybe older if you counted the way she carried herself, straight spine, calm hands, eyes that didn't rush. People listened when she spoke, even when she didn't raise her voice. Especially then. She finally looked up. "I need stability," she said, as if reading from a list. "For my son. For the board. For the optics." "Optics," I repeated. I was 27, a single dad with a 4-year-old who thought dinosaurs were still alive somewhere. Optics had never been my strong suit. She watched me the way mechanics watch an engine they don't quite trust yet. "I'll pay you," she added, then paused. "Generously." The word hung between us. Pay. Husband. 1 year. I thought of my kids' shoes with the peeling soles. I thought of the landlord's voicemail I hadn't deleted yet. I thought of the way she'd stayed late last Thursday, sitting on the shop stairs with a coffee gone cold, listening while I talked about bedtime routines like it mattered. I said, "What does pretending actually look like?" Her mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something smaller. Appearances. Events. Living arrangements. Living arrangements, I echoed, slower this time. She stood, walked to the window. Outside. Rain had started without asking permission, turning the street into a gray mirror. "There's a guest room," she said. Then, after a beat, "sometimes." That was the pause. The one you feel more than hear. The room seemed to lean in, waiting. Later, much later, after paperwork and signatures and rules spoken carefully around the thing we weren't naming, I followed her to the apartment attached to the building. Temporary, she'd said. Practical. The lights flickered on with a hum. Boxes stacked neatly by the wall. A life half unpacked. She showed me the kitchen, the bathroom, the spare room. Each door opened, closed. When she reached the last one, she hesitated. Just a fraction. Her fingers tightened on the knob, then relaxed. "So," I said, because silence was starting to feel heavy. "We're sharing a bed." She didn't answer right away. The lamp cast a soft circle over the room, catching the faint silver at her temples, the tired confidence in her eyes. She met my gaze and, for the first time that day, didn't look away. "Only when we have to," she said. That night, lying awake, listening to rain tick against the window, I kept thinking about that pause. About the way her hand had stilled on the door. About how some things, once said, even half said, don't leave you alone again. It wasn't the public stuff, holding doors, standing close at events, answering questions with practiced half-truths. It was the quiet hours. The in-between moments where there wasn't an audience and the lines blurred without asking permission. That night, she was still at the shop when I finished closing up downstairs. The lights in her office were on, a thin strip of gold under the door. I knocked once, then waited, counting the seconds the way you do when you're suddenly aware of your own breathing. "Come in," she said. She had her sleeves rolled up, hair twisted into a loose knot that had given up hours ago. Papers were spread across her desk, but she wasn't reading them. She was rubbing her thumb into the heel of her palm, slow and absent, like she was trying to wake her hand up. "You're still here?" I said. "So are you." She didn't look up. "Can you hold the flashlight?" The breaker's been acting up again. The storage room was narrow, concrete walls holding onto the day's cold. I stood behind her on the ladder, angling the light where she pointed. Our shoulders didn't touch, but I could feel the space where they almost did. She smelled like clean soap and something sharper, coffee, maybe, gone stale. "Left," she said. I adjusted the beam. "Like this?" "Yes. Thank you." Her voice was steady, but her foot shifted on the wrong. I put my hand out without thinking, hovering near her calf, not touching. She noticed. Her breath caught, just barely. "I've got it," she said too quickly. "Okay." I stepped back, though my hand stayed raised a second longer than necessary. The breaker clicked. The lights came back with a low hum. She exhaled, a sound that surprised both of us. She leaned her head back against the wall, eyes closed, just for a moment. "Tired?" I asked. She opened her eyes. I don't get that word very often. Something about the way she said it, like it had been misplaced somewhere years ago, made me stay quiet. She laughed then, a soft, surprised sound that didn't quite fit the room. It faded as quickly as it came. "My son has a field trip tomorrow," she said, as if changing topics required no transition. "I promised I'd go." "Promised," I repeated. Her mouth pressed into a line. "I've been breaking a lot of those lately." She rubbed her hands together, fingers stiff, and I noticed the faint red marks where rings used to be. The skin there looked newer, paler, like it hadn't caught up yet. "I can take him," I offered, then stopped myself. "Too much. Too fast. I mean, if you need help." She studied me, really looked this time. I saw the calculation, the restraint. Then something else slipped through, a flicker of relief. "She didn't seem proud of, thank you," she said quietly. Later, in the kitchen, we stood on opposite sides of the counter, eating reheated leftovers off mismatched plates. The clock ticked too loud. When she reached for the salt, our fingers brushed. Not an accident. Not entirely. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. It was nothing. Just skin, just a second. But when I went to bed that night, it was her hands I couldn't stop thinking about. How careful they were, and how tired. The storm rolled in without warning, the kind that turns the windows dark before you're ready for it. We were halfway through dinner, quiet, practical food eaten from real plates this time, when the power flickered. Once, twice, then settled into a dim, uncertain glow from the lamp over the sink. "Don't worry," she said. "It usually holds." Usually. I noticed how often she relied on that word. Rain tapped against the glass, then harder, more insistent. She gathered the plates, moving with that same controlled efficiency she brought to everything. I reached for one without asking. Our hands met at the edge of the counter. She didn't flinch, but she didn't look at me either. "Thanks," she said. We stood there a second too long, close enough that I could feel the heat from her arm. I told myself to step back. I didn't. Her phone buzzed on the table. She froze. It was subtle, just a pause in motion, a tightening at the shoulders, but I caught it. She glanced at the screen, then turned it face down with more force than necessary. "You don't have to." I started. "It's fine." She picked up the plates again. "It's just noise." But her jaw had set, the muscle there jumping once. When she reached the sink, she turned the water on too fast, splashing her sleeve. She cursed under her breath, a word I'd never heard her use before. It sounded strange coming from her, like she'd borrowed it from someone else. I handed her a towel. She took it, our fingers overlapping. This time, she pulled away. "Sorry," she said, and I wasn't sure what part she meant. The phone buzzed again, then stopped. "I should probably." She gestured vaguely toward the hallway, toward the rest of the life she didn't talk about much. "Just in case." I nodded. "Yeah, of course." She leaned against the counter instead of leaving, closed her eyes. The rain filled the silence between us, loud enough to excuse it. "He doesn't like this arrangement," she said finally. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. "He says it's confusing," she went on. "For our son. For everyone." "And you?" I asked. She opened her eyes then, looked at me like she was weighing something fragile. "I don't max the science based on what I like." That felt like a door closing. Or maybe one that had never been opened in the first place. "I know this is temporary," I said carefully. "You don't owe me anything." "I know." Her voice softened. "That's what makes it easier." The lights flickered again. Thunder followed, close enough to rattle the dishes. She startled this time, just a little. Without thinking, I reached out. My hand landed on her wrist. She didn't pull away. Her skin was warm, her pulse quick under my thumb. She looked down at where I was touching her, then back up at me. For a second, neither of us moved. I could have said something then. Something honest. Something that would have changed the shape of the room. Instead, she stepped back, smoothed her sleeve, straightened her spine. I should take that call, she said. I watched her walk away, my hand still lifted in the air where her wrist had been, wondering what would have happened if I'd held on 1 second longer. The next morning was too quiet. No rain. No machine starting up downstairs. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the sound of her moving through the apartment with deliberate care, like every step needed permission first. I found her at the table, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Her hair was down, falling in a way I'd never seen before, softer, less controlled. She looked up when I entered, then looked away again, eyes fixed on a point just past my shoulder. "We need to talk," she said. It wasn't dramatic. No edge to it. Just a statement, placed carefully between us. I sat across from her. The chair scraped louder than it should have. She flinched, then caught herself. "This isn't working the way it's supposed to," she said. I waited. She always needed space to finish a thought. "I asked you to help me create something stable," she went on. "Predictable." And instead, she trailed off, lifting the mug, then setting it back down untouched. Instead, I'm finding myself thinking about things I don't have time to think about. The clock ticked. I counted 3 seconds between each sound. "What kind of things?" I asked, knowing I shouldn't. Her eyes finally met mine. They didn't soften. They didn't harden either. They just stayed. "Us," she said. The word landed heavier than I expected. "I don't know what we're doing," she continued. "And I don't like not knowing." I swallowed. "We're pretending." She shook her head, once. "No, we're performing." Pretending implies there's nothing underneath. That was the closest she'd come to saying it. Close enough that my chest tightened, close enough that I had to look down at my hands to make sure they weren't shaking. "I didn't mean to make this harder," I said. "I can pull back. Be better at the rules. That's not the problem." Her voice dropped. "You already are." She stood and moved to the window, arms crossed tight against herself. Outside, the street was ordinary. People walking dogs. A bus stopping, starting. Life continuing without waiting for us to figure this out. "I'm not supposed to feel unsettled in my own home," she said. "I built this place to be quiet. Safe. And now it isn't." I asked. She didn't answer right away. When she did, it wasn't to me. "Now I notice when you're not here." That sentence cracked something open. I stood, took a step toward her, then stopped. The space between us felt charged, like it might snap if I crossed it. She turned then, back against the glass, eyes searching my face like she was memorizing it for later. "This has an end date," she said. "It has to. I know. And when it ends," she continued, slower now, "we go back to who we were before." The lie sat there, unchallenged. She closed her eyes. Her shoulders dropped, just a fraction. I don't know if I remember how to do that. Neither of us moved. Neither of us reached out. The silence stretched, heavy and intimate, until it felt like the only honest thing left between us. I was looking for a charger in the hallway drawer when I found the envelope. It wasn't hidden, just misplaced, tucked beneath manuals and old receipts, like it had slid there on its own and never been retrieved. My name wasn't on it. Neither was hers. I did open it. I just stood there holding it, feeling like I'd picked up something warm that didn't belong to me. The paper was worn soft at the edges. Touched often. Put down. Picked up again. Behind me, the apartment door opened and closed. She stopped when she saw it in my hand. For a second, we both pretended it was nothing. Then she exhaled. Slowly. "You weren't supposed to find that." "I can put it back," I said. My voice sounded farther away than I expected. She shook her head. "No, it's fine." She crossed the space between us and took the envelope, holding it against her chest like it might slip away if she didn't. "It's old. Do you want me to?" "No," she hesitated, then added, "I should tell you." We sat at the table again, the same one where she'd said we need to talk. She didn't look at me this time. She turned the envelope over in her hands, thumbs tracing the crease. "He wrote it the year before my son was born," she said. "Not his father. Before that." I waited. He left. A small shrug. Not dramatically, just quietly. Said he wasn't ready to be the kind of person someone could rely on. Her mouth curved, humorless. I believed him. She slid the envelope toward me, but didn't let go. I kept it because it reminded me not to expect things from people who weren't offering. "That's a hard thing to carry," I said. Yes. She finally looked up. It made my life very manageable. I thought of the way she planned everything. The rules. The end dates. The careful distance she kept even when we were standing inches apart. He used to stand like you, she added suddenly. Like me. Hands in his pockets. Like he was trying not to reach for something. Her gaze dropped to my hands, then lifted again. And he listened. Really listened. That's what makes it dangerous. For who? I asked. She smiled then, small and tired. For someone who's already decided she knows how things end. I didn't know what to do with that. With the fact that I might be a reminder instead of a choice. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. I'm not him, I said, not defensively. Just true. I know. She folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope. That's the problem. She stood, walked past me, then stopped. For the first time since this began, she reached out, not to touch me, but to straighten the collar of my shirt. The gesture was brief, intimate, almost unconscious. Her fingers lingered a fraction too long. I didn't see this coming, she said quietly. You. Then she stepped back, creating distance where there hadn't been any a moment before, leaving me sitting there with the strange, unsettling sense that something irreversible had just shifted, even though nothing, technically, had happened at all. It happened on an ordinary night, which felt right somehow. No storms, no interruptions, just the apartment settling around us the way it always did after 9. Pipes clicking, distant traffic, the refrigerator humming like it was thinking. Her son was asleep. I knew because she checked twice. She came back to the living room and didn't turn on the overhead light. Sat on the far end of the couch, shoes still on, hands folded together like she was waiting for instructions. I stayed where I was, giving her space we both knew was no longer protecting anyone. I've been unfair, she said. Not dramatic, not heavy, just honest. I didn't answer right away. The truth didn't need help entering the room. I asked you to step into something temporary, she continued, eyes on the darkened window. But I didn't stay temporary myself. I nodded once. I noticed. That made her smile, barely. She leaned back, then forward again, restless. I don't want to pretend anymore, she said. And I don't know how to stop without losing something I didn't plan on needing. The word needing stayed with me. I don't need promises, I said. Or certainty. She finally looked at me. Really looked. That's what scares me. I shifted closer, slowly, like you do around something skittish. She didn't move away. The space between us closed not with urgency, but with exhaustion. The kind that comes after holding yourself upright for too long. I know how this looks, she said, and how it could end. So do I. Then why are you still here? Her voice wasn't testing me. It was asking. I thought of the letter. The pauses. The way she noticed absence like it mattered. Because leaving would be a lie, that did it. Her shoulders dropped, the tension she carried loosening all at once. She leaned back against the couch and closed her eyes. Without thinking, I reached out. My hand found hers where it rested between us, fingers careful, open. She didn't grab on. She didn't pull away. Her hand turned, palm warm against mine. We sat like that for a long time. No words. Just breathing, sinking without effort. At some point, her head tipped forward, resting lightly against my shoulder. Not claiming. Not hiding. Just there. I can't promise you anything, she said quietly. I'm not asking you to. Her thumb brushed my knuckle once. Absent. Familiar already. When she finally straightened, she didn't move far. Just enough to look at me. There was no decision spoken aloud. It didn't need to be. We had both stopped pretending we were untouched. We'll take it one day at a time, she said. I nodded. That's all I know how to do anyway. She leaned in then, not for a kiss, but to rest her forehead against mine. The contact was brief, grounding, like a punctuation mark instead of a sentence. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere downstairs, metal cooled. Nothing about the world changed. But when she stayed beside me instead of standing up, when our hands remained joined without discussion, it felt like we had quietly chosen something that had already been choosing us back. I'm telling this from a place I didn't think we'd reach. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's steady. The year didn't unfold the way either of us planned. It rarely does. What I remember most now isn't the pretending or the explanations we rehearsed for other people. It's the quiet routines that formed without asking permission. Morning coffee poured a little too strong. Her son handing me drawings like I'd always been part of the furniture. The way she started leaving her office door open. Somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for the ground to fall out from under us. I used to think love announced itself, that it arrived with urgency, certainty, a kind of reckless confidence. I know better now. Love, whatever that word really means, showed up for us in pauses. In the way she learned to sit with uncertainty instead of outmaneuvering it. In the way I learned that staying doesn't always require guarantees. She changed in ways that were easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. She laughed more, but quieter. She stopped over-explaining. When things went wrong, she didn't immediately look for who to blame or how to control the ending. She let moments exist unfinished. That was new for her. As for me, I stopped measuring my worth by how replaceable I felt. I stopped standing with my hands in my pockets. I learned that being chosen doesn't always sound like a promise. Sometimes it sounds like, "Are you still here?" And realizing the answer matters. We never made a big announcement when the year ended. No dramatic reveal. No shift that anyone else could point to and say, "That's when it happened." We just kept sitting next to each other. Kept showing up to the same places. Kept letting silence be part of the conversation instead of something to escape. What I learned is this. Love doesn't always arrive as a beginning. Sometimes it arrives as a correction. A quiet one. It teaches you that timing isn't about being early or late. It's about being ready to stop pretending you're unaffected. There are still things we don't know. There always will be. But the pretending ended long before the contract did, and when we finally acknowledged that, nothing fell apart. If anything, things settled. Sometimes she still reaches for my hand without looking. Sometimes I catch her watching the room when I leave it. Not to hold on, just to notice. That's enough. And maybe that's the point. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?